your host, William Kavan.
Wow, that's a really long applause for me. I appreciate it, though. So, hi, guys. My name is William Kavan. I'm the department chair in the digital cinematography program here at Full Sail. And I am so happy that you guys could make this to independent filmmaking in the YouTube age. We've got some amazing people up here. Speaking of amazing people, if I start on the very far end, we've got Master Brett Novak.
No, thank you.
We have the amazing Kyle Frazer.
How you doing?
Woo.
Next up, we have Ronald Diltz III. And Famor Botero. Filmmaker extraordinaire. So guys, welcome to the panel today. We really kind of just want to kick into what it's like being an independent filmmaker in this age. Like, how can YouTube actually help you as an independent filmmaker? Somebody want to jump in?
Oh, man.
Yeah, I can talk about that, I guess. So for me, the big thing about it used to be you would make a short film, you would want to show it to people, and they would like it or not like it, and you would hopefully get work from that. But you had to get into these very specific places with very specific themes. And now you're in a place where whatever you make, you can show it to everyone. And anyone can watch it, and anyone can see what your style is and what you want to do. And all it takes is you to share out a link to as many people as you can, and they'll share it, and it'll grow. And so it's very much a market where it doesn't matter if some festival thinks your work is good enough, or if it gets circulated around through people handing the DVDs to other people. It can literally be seen the world over at any point in time. So that for me is like the big change is you have your own distribution company sitting on the laptop that you have in front of you.
Yeah. I also think YouTube is a great way to get people excited about your work. Whether it's showing a trailer of your film and just putting it out there, and you can always share that link, which is always great on all your other social media sites. It's also a great way to blog about your experience and get people, give them the opportunity to be on set with you and see how you're working on set. So it's so much you can do with YouTube.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when you're starting and you're creating those stories and you're kind of like creating your book of your life as filmmakers, YouTube becomes a platform for you to share that story with people all over the world, and there are no limits to what you can share. You can share your trailers. I know for me on a personal level, I was extremely excited when one of my trailers went semi-viral. But that personal connection that happens when you're showing your work, it's pretty rewarding when you see that people are interested in your work, that people are interested in what you're creating. And you're right, whether that film festival thinks you're worth it or not, somebody out there is watching your work, and I think that's what it's all about. That's what it's about. It's about growing and creating your content and having a place to put it so that you can show people and you can have discussions about what you're making.
Yeah, there's a whole new democracy of content, in the same way a lot of us kind of know the scope of content you can find on YouTube, and we all go like, it's so filled with, garbage and this and this. Like, yeah, but this exact same technology gives you the freedom that people have dreamed about for years. Artists and filmmakers didn't have this ability very short time ago. And the ability to actually, you can become intimidated by the idea of like, okay, there's so much out there and there's so much now competing against. Yeah, but you're also given a platform that you would have had to live in the right city, had the right amount of money, living in an age with DSLRs and just production already getting cheaper. It's an incredible ability. My entire career was based off of my YouTube channel, which is crazy because I didn't even go to school for film here. I went for digital art and design, and I was already doing YouTube since beta version. And it was just something that I just did as it grew naturally. And then I was doing visual effects for years for post houses and then uploading my own YouTube content. And it was literally the same weekend that I quit my job doing visual effects was one of my videos went viral. And my whole career shifted from visual effects to filmmaking in one weekend because I happened to get someone happened to share the link in the right place, and it happened to just blow up, and that was 7 years ago, and my entire career has been crafted around that. So it's amazing the platform you now have.
Brett, I saw some of the films on your YouTube page, and you've made some really amazing stuff.
Thank you. Go on.
Not a problem. Allow me to continue to fluff this area and make the question even more amazing. Not only that, when we got to talk backstage a little bit, and you were talking about how long you've been with YouTube since beta, and now that there's been more attention drawn to how monetization works, how time frames work, what do you guys think about that when it comes to today's filmmakers? Is this something that we need to look at on how to forward our career? Is YouTube or self-distribution that way a very reasonable way to do this as a professional? Or is this something that you do to booster a larger career?
It's interesting because you're always kind of at the mercy, if you're working in any kind of like not personally funded project, it's the lifelong artist struggle of you're at the mercy of your creatives, your producers, and you have the freedom of working for yourself, but you're still kind of at the mercy of like, you can't help but be caught up in that, like, is this going to do well? And I have to be strategic. I mean, in all reality, to be efficient, you got to pay bills, yes, but at the same time, as an artist, no, you should be doing what's true to you. But it's good. I think what's happening right now with YouTube is they've shifted into watch time monetization. So it's no longer based on views. So for a long time, it was the amount of like literal views you had, and now it's the amount of minutes to watch, which pushes artists and filmmakers to not make just kind of, I mean, there's a lot of clickbait, yes, but it's the amount of minutes you watch, how compelling of a story you can tell, which is much more important as, storytellers. And so there's a reward system now that they're pushing that I don't think was there 5 years ago, basically, where it just became like, it's a crazy video. But now it's like, okay, I have a reason to make a 30-minute piece outside of the fact that I wanted to do it in the first place. Now I have like, okay, it will work on a bigger scale. It will help me pay bills. Where before I had to kind of be at the mercy of like, this is my cat, which is awesome. Cats are awesome. But yeah, I think it's moving in the right direction. Yeah. Again.
I'm gonna jump in. So I got too close there. I apologize, guys. So I think with the advent of the smart TV, the longer form YouTube is going to start to grow a lot as well, because it's no longer a computer or a phone or a mobile style watching platform. I can sit down at my TV, my remote control has a YouTube button, I can hit it and I can watch stuff in a standard format. So it's not so much about, I just need this 30-second clip to get my view count up. Now I can, as he said, tell my story, get people intrigued, and they can sit down and watch YouTube as more of like a TV channel as opposed to I'm bored, I need to kill 10-minute kind of platform. That's all I had.
Oh, okay. Yes. No, that is really some great information there. But yes, it's getting a lot easier to watch and screen content on your televisions at home. And I think that's very important in the route that we're going in the future. YouTube is definitely an opportunity to basically get some feedback from your work as well. Just getting experience from submitting to film festivals. I know with myself, submitting to film festivals, and I was like, I'm not getting in anything, and it was just starting to really be something that you eventually depress you, because like, I know my work is good, I know somebody got to like it. YouTube is a great way to just send it out, and so I was able to get some great feedback, and as artists, once you get that feedback, it continues to push you forward, so it's always great to get that. So I love the way YouTube is going.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's just an amazing platform. And I also think that, I know personally I've used YouTube to market myself a lot as an artist. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but as you start getting interviews and you start getting all these content, all these people reporting about what you're doing, there is some sort of story there. And I know I use my YouTube channel to get out there and to share what's happening in my career. Whether I'm shooting a film or I'm working with a certain actress, and I want to talk about that stuff. And people like that. People want to hear. They feel like they have some sort of window into your career. And so I think that for me, that's been a really great platform as well, to just kind of let people know who I am and like what my story is. And I use that all the time.
I feel like I feel like there's a natural kind of like the human obsession with celebrity really comes from the idea of really it's just human connection.
Right.
So I mean, as silly and ridiculous as it can lead to, or like it can amount to, the base of it is still the same. It's this idea of it's somebody that I connect with as a human being, and they have work or music or not. I mean, just a celebrity for that matter.
Right.
And so it works in the same fashion that when you're telling stories, I mean, all art. That was like the best advice I got in my career. At some point, it was basically someone saying like all art at the end of the day, in some form or fashion, is just essentially two people communicating.
Right.
And so when you look at it from the perspective of like you have your art, when you have a platform that allows interaction and a relationship with your viewers, and not this just cold cut like, here's me and then I go back home kind of vibe. This constant back and forth allows a relationship to develop and people become invested in you, which is why like I think that's what with DVDs. The shift into behind the scenes and interviews and all these extra material, YouTube is amazing for that. And because it, you fall in love with the director, you want to know more. You want to see his process. You want to talk to him, and you literally can talk to them. And,
And to jump on that as well, as artists, sometimes we like to look back at where we come from or what we've worked on before.
Yes.
I know with me, it's like going to that first film that I've ever had opportunity to produce. It's just like, wow, look at the growth. And we still learning. You're still going to continue to grow. You're still going to learn. But having YouTube and putting your content on YouTube, you're always able to go back and look at those experiences. And I think that's probably the most special thing about YouTube for me.
I have friends. I agree with you. I was just gonna touch up on that. I have friends that are doing really well, and they're always going back saying, "Oh, I'm gonna go ahead and delete that," and I always have a problem with that. Totally. I think it's great to show that you've grown as an artist and that your story has evolved, and flourished and all that stuff. So I've kept all my content in there, and I think it's interesting because you can see the growth. You can literally see the growth, and so I think YouTube is just a great platform for that, for your story. And as you create your story, you're releasing different stories that are gonna go out there and get people interested in watching what you're creating and what's coming. So
yeah,
I think it's great.
So one of the things, Famor, that I was reading about, and I caught your little stint on the news about some of the social documentaries and things that you've been working on.
Yeah.
And when it comes to YouTube, tell me a little bit about how this can help, not only in where you've been so far when it comes to social documentaries, but what these gates are opening for the future.
Right. Well, I think in my experience, I was able to get my work and get, I would say, pieces of what I was working on through several nonprofit organizations. And so when I linked up to them, I started sharing the story of the film that I was creating. And so I created, in a way, I don't want to call it a product, but I created in a way a story for them to be able to share within their people. So it's like creating a domino effect where I would release something, whether it was a statement or behind the scenes or a trailer or something, and I would give that link to people so that once they view what I was working on, they would hang on to me, they would follow me, they would want to know more about me. So you also need to be careful on the stuff that you're releasing. You don't want to tell too much sometimes. You want to keep it interesting. You want to make sure that people are going to follow your work and whether they like it or not, you're just trying to attract as many people as possible. So I've used it for that. Now that I've pretty much shifted into fiction, I've been linking, like I've got this thing going on with Yahoo and YouTube in Cartagena, in the film festival of Cartagena, which is next month, and I'm releasing my trailer of my latest film, and so they're creating like an entire event where I've told them I'm going to release it through your platforms, but not until this day when this specific event is coming up. And so I've been keeping up with people, and people are like just excited about that specific day. So I think there's different ways you can definitely use all of these elements to benefit you, and it's, you know, it's out there for everybody to use.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm a fan of that. Yeah.
That was a good comment.
Right.
What kind of changes have you guys noticed when it comes to trying to connect with your audience? Because we've talked about it, and we started talking about the importance of connecting with that audience and creating, for lack of a better term, that niche group of people that are going to help push you as an artist forward. And I was just wondering from you guys what you think about how that's going to be changing over the next few years. Because for me, I'm a little bit more of a futurist. What's going on right now is good, and everyone up here has done some amazing things. I'm blown away by most of it. But what's really important, especially from a university standpoint, is where are we going to be tomorrow? Because when some of our students graduate, when they start moving forward, what was good for today is never good for tomorrow.
Right.
And to be honest, you guys are all amazing experts. I did some amazing cell phone research over the last 20 minutes and while they were talking. Thanks for cutting away from that, by the way. And but no, I mean, where do you guys think this is going?
Good.
Well, I think that, you know, whether, you know, I think, you know, and I'm always speaking from myself as an artist and as someone who's still very new in the industry, but who's doing somewhat okay. I think that what I like to think is that there are different platforms. In this case, we're talking about YouTube, but there are different platforms out there. And so what you gotta think is, am I going to be the artist that's gonna sit there and watch it all happen, or am I going to be part of creating something amazing for everybody to watch? And I think that once you define that, because there are people who will sit there and watch and not act upon. And there is not a perfect moment in life, I think, or at least there hasn't been for me. I think that there have been perfect opportunities. And so if you don't take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you, then you will be the kind that will sit there and watch, and who wants to do that, right? So I think that what you gotta do is just create content, create content and put it out there, and do it with passion. And I think that once you do things with passion, you won't go wrong. Even if nobody watches it, who cares? It's out there, and you've experienced what it is to think of something, write it, develop it, produce it, finish it, and put it out there. And I think that is a beautiful thing in itself.
Yeah, focusing on the fact that as an artist, like that being your base, like that being your core at the end of the day. If you go to a school like Full Sail, it's an amazing school, but you don't want to exit in this idea that it's all about technology and all about being like the cutting edge, right? Because your base still is the same. Like I said, all art at the end of the day becomes a conversation between two people. That will probably never change. I mean, it's who we are as a species. Like, this is how we interact with each other. And so the technology, like being open-minded to the technology as it changes and the platforms change, that there's no such thing as like the perfect platform, because it will always change. It always has and always will. And so YouTube is just something that works really well right now, but so does lots of things.
Right.
And so it not putting the cart before the horse, not you're looking at a distribution, but you as an artist comes first. And so I mean, honestly, that's the best advice, is just make stuff constantly. Yeah. I get kids that email me and ask me questions like, I want to become a filmmaker, what kind of camera should I get? This like, first of all, your phone is better than most cameras than I've ever used to build my entire career on. Don't lose sight of that. Like, you got to learn the tools, but it really, the fanciest brush doesn't matter who, if it's in the hand of somebody that's not willing to sit and put in the hours to learn how to paint. Yeah. So just make stuff constantly. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to worry about it. Like, I was having a conversation with a student the other day about, the idea of like visiting their old work, in the same sense of like your old stuff you used to post. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. Like you have a new set of eyes towards it, and you feel like you're better now. And you know what you did wrong back then. But the reality is, in 10 years, you're going to do the same thing about you being where you are now. And so you have, like, forgive yourself and continue creating. And if you want to redo it, do it. I did a piece at Full Sail, like a concept that I had in my head since high school. I did a version of high school, real crude After Effects animation piece, composite piece. Then I did another version of it at Full Sail. And then I, like, let it sit. And then I, like, developed the skills and production, worked at post houses. And then I finally, like, shot it for real in Armenia like a year ago. I had a budget. I finally had, like, the experience to put it to, like, I put it to bed. Like, it's, I'm finally done with it. But it's one of the few examples, I now look at my old pieces, the old versions, and I have a story.
Right.
It's like, I love the fact that I can show the version from high school. I can show the version from Full Sail. And it's the work I've always wanted in my head. Because the struggle as an artist is you tend to have an image in your head, and you're frustrated by the fact you can't put it into whatever medium you have of choice. But, like, allow yourself to make mistakes and to try.
I would go into thinking more about not just create to create, but also create to expand and experiment. Yes. There's a lot going on right now with live streaming, with VR, like all of these other avenues that are, it's very Wild Westy. Who knows what you can do? Like, I can set it up so me and my friend are doing a live stream. I'm here, he's in London, and we can swap back and forth, and we can tell a story that way, like live, like almost like a play, but we can show it to whoever wants to watch, or the hundreds of thousands that in my head will watch. But it really comes down to telling the story between you and one other person. So, like, you have Twitter, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have all of these platforms where you can engage people in what you're doing, get feedback, you can grow that way. So, like, just because I posted my video on YouTube, I know I'm gonna post it on Facebook, I know I'm gonna post a sample of it on Instagram, I'm gonna send out links on Twitter. Just be engaged and be ready to accept the negative and the positive feedback from people and take it and grow with it, and just engage people. And you will be able to tell your story to more people, and you'll be able to get feedback so you can grow as your storytelling needs to.
Guess that's my cue. To jump on what Kyle was saying, it's like when engaging with people, you have to get used to posting stuff. And see, as a filmmaker, I had to learn this myself as well. Like he said, you have Instagram, Facebook. We all probably have friends that post something every day just to get people involved and to build their fans. Your Facebook, your social media, all your friends, that is your audience right now. You got to figure out a way to get more, but that is your audience. You should figure out ways to showcase your work to them and build around that. So a situation with me as a filmmaker, I learned this like years later. I remember we were getting finished doing a short of mine, and we wanted to kind of keep our audience engaged, let everybody know the time was coming. You're working on a project and the deadline is passed, and you got to keep your audience engaged. So we started releasing scenes from the film that we had finished that we thought would keep the audience excited about it. And so when we released those, then it's like, okay, a couple of days went by. Here's a scene from the movie, and then it's almost like releasing a new trailer, if you think about it. But that kept the audience engaged. So when that time came, it was like, you have to keep them engaged, because in this day and age, with all the media that's going on, it's like people can forget about you just like that. You know what I'm saying? So keeping your audience engaged, keeping your face, on social media, whether it's a picture or you working on set, is great,
I don't know if you guys have noticed or not, but one of the main themes they keep hitting back to is being an artist and communication. And I've always had students come up to me and other young filmmakers that are not students, and they really talk about the difference between being an artist and trying to make something to make money. And I think what I want these guys to hit on next is, because of the age that we're in, where is it more important to start at? What's more important today? Trying to make the money as a filmmaker or trying to make the art? What do you guys think?
I start?
Go for it. It's all you.
Well, I don't know. I like to call myself as a great example of this, because when I So I come from theater. That's kind of how I started. I started as an actor. And when I started producing and directing theater, I knew I'd always jump into film because that was my dream as a child. Every time I spoke of the future or anything like that, I wanted to become a filmmaker. That's what I wanted to do in this life experience. So when I graduated from Full Sail and I was ready to hit the road, I had very clear visions of what I wanted to do with my career. First of all, I wanted to create content that inspired people, and I wanted to start working on how to get to Hollywood, if you want to put it that way. You know, I wanted to ensure that I would have a journey of storytelling which would then allow me to play with the big people. That was basically the simplest thing I can put it in. And so because I did a few things that kind of went viral and I had all this attention, I was offered a job right out of Full Sail, which cost me my family's relationship. But why I'm speaking about this is because this job represented money, and it was actually a lot of money to be a new graduate, but it wasn't part of my dream. It was part of somebody else's dream. And so when I sat down with my family and I told them, listen, I was offered this job at this huge network, but that's not what I want to do. That's not really what. Yes, I want the money. I'm not saying that I don't, but there's nothing about my growth as a storyteller that is attached to someone telling me what to do or how to do it. Until I get out there and struggle and experience and write and cry and love and laugh and do all of those things on my own as an artist, there's no way I can put a project out there that's gonna make an audience feel compelled and that's gonna touch people. There's no way I can do that because you don't experience that going to school. You just don't. So I chose the other path, and it was very difficult. But it wasn't impossible. It wasn't impossible. So I think for me, those very few years of filmmaking were all about my growth. You know, I was still, you know, I was very lucky because I started traveling the world and I started just growing myself in the story making, like that technique, like that place that I wanted to find, that I felt comfortable, and money just wasn't part of all that. You know, it just wasn't. Struggle was, you know, the struggle of the artist was there, but I was very happy. I was extremely happy because I was following what I wanted to do. And when money came, I was ready. I was ready for somebody to tell me, here's the money that you need for that film. And I had no questions about it.
Well, I'm still waiting on money. It's crazy because my situation, I'm from theater as well. I started out as an actor in high school and wanted to study theater, but of course, you know how your parents are. They want you to have something that's more stable that you can fall back on. And so originally when I went to the University of Florida, I was studying engineering and was so unhappy, stressful. To me, that meant money. Engineering is money, but I was not happy. Of course, eventually ended up having to switch my major anyway, and guess who took me in? The theater department. So that's how I started my journey. And I didn't know where I was going. I just wanted to act at the time. I was given the opportunity to produce my first play and fell in love with that, writing and producing. And then from there, it was kind of like, I want to reach a broader audience as well. So Full Sail University was definitely on my list next to study film. And so it still have constantly been a journey, you know, trying to find people to invest in your projects. And you learn as you go along. You get people excited. You get your family excited. You get your friends excited. And it's just a journey. With the plays that I produce, usually with those situations, I didn't get like a big return. Usually it pays for itself. The same thing with the films I produce. With a premiere, it usually pays for itself. So I'm in the process now of learning how to step to that next step in my career, which is, as you all know as artists, we always learning. So that's my journey.
So I'm a little different from these guys. I'm gonna call it the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde approach. So I have this one side that wants to eat and wants to make money and buy fun camera toys and such, and then I have this other side that wants to be super creative. And I just try to balance it out. So, you know, I'll go and a lot of the content that I make for YouTube is sponsored. So, you know, this this company that is down the road and has theme park stuff will say, hey, we need a YouTube video. And I say, cool, I'm coming out. And I still get the chance to be creative and hone my craft while they're paying me. And then I get to go over here and say, all right, I wrote this script. Let me take what I learned over here and this money, and I will produce it myself. And I will use the skills that I learned on the paying job to fund my passion. And for me, that works. Like, I enjoy going out and working and doing camera work and getting some money is a fun return. And then I still need to get my creative outlet out, so I have these over here that I can now afford to produce and make. You know, I don't have these huge intentions on taking these things and making them big. If it happens, it happens. But for me, it's about the outlet and the time and experience and the fun that I have making my own projects. But I can still experience that on a paid project. So it doesn't bother me that much because I can still bring my creativity. I can still bring my storytelling skills. Sure, following a family around a theme park might not seem like a great time, but you get to make this interesting video, and you get to produce something that you know hundreds of thousands of people are watching because you can watch that little clicker go up. And so it's gratifying on both aspects. So I just I balance the two out and try and keep myself level-headed that way.
Yeah, it's a strange mix because like me now, I have to like think back to my history of getting to the spot that I've gotten now, because yeah, going through Full Sail. So I was like self-taught film growing up through high school. I grew up skateboarding and filming skateboarding, and I did that any chance I got. And then I went to school. I had an interest in web design. I was like naturally good at coding and motion graphics. And so I didn't want to go to school for film. I wanted to go for something that was that I knew less about, but had still quite the passion still growing. So I went for DAD. Now, the bachelor program had just started here. But any chance I got, any kind of break we got, I'd fly back home to Chicago. I'd film skateboarding still. And then any time we had any kind of like open-ended project, like you can make whatever this month. I'm like, well, I'm doing a video, and it's probably involving skateboarding in some capacity. Graduating, I got offered a job doing visual effects, and I loved it. I thrived on it. I was good at it. But then I got burnt out, kind of I wouldn't even say I wasn't aware that I was burnt out. I was a couple years into working on big music videos and commercials and stuff, and then I got thrown on jury duty for a month and a half. And when you work in production when you work in production, you can't disappear for like you're the guy. We don't have another guy. If we had another guy, he'd be the guy. You can't like call in sick for the day. Like we have 45 shots that have to be finished by 2 a.m. Like you have to come in. So me leaving for a month and a half was not good on a company perspective. But then it tweaked me out, and it kind of like built this romanticism in me that I don't think I really realized before. And so I was outside, like I had a 2-hour lunch, and I was like, oh, this is what California is like during the day? Like I had never seen the sun. I'd lived in a dark office. I mean, you're all Full Sail students. You know what it's like to live in a dark office sitting at a computer for, 30 hours a day. So it was this weird shift that, I quit my job by the end of that month and a half. And it was the same kind of thing. Like I was making really good money at a really young age. I was like only a couple years out of Full Sail. And yeah, having that same phone call with my folks, like, yeah, I'm going to quit. Like, what are you going to do? I don't know. I was just going to go freelance. I had built up a little bit of network. And during that jury duty time, I had weekends off, which I hadn't had in a long time. I shot skateboarding. And it was that video that went viral in that month. And so I came full circle to all of a sudden now being in a situation where my passions that I don't want to say forgotten about, but I hadn't thought about as like a logistic career came full circle. And so I quit my job. I had like no money. I had a little bit of money saved up to get through, but that was 7 years ago. And since then, I've traveled to 25 countries. I've shot commercials and stuff. And so getting back to that, I've become very kind of hippy-dippy in regards to the way I look at stuff. I'm a big fan of like the Alan Watts mentality. There's an old writer from the 60s talking about, if you essentially do what you want to do. Because if you spend your day, if you build a career doing something you don't like doing, you will essentially spend your time doing something you don't like doing so you can afford to continue doing something you don't like doing, which is ridiculous. And so it's better to essentially not look at money as an object, to be smart, But if you do something you love doing, regardless of the money, you will ultimately master it. Because the only way to master something is to care in here. And then ironically, somebody will want to pay you for it because you care. But so I can't, though, disregard all of my experience I had at post houses working logistically for companies, because I've built a business that I don't really think I would have been able to pay rent. I mean, LA rent is not cheap, and your incoming student loans. Like, you need to find a way to get into it. So yeah, I mean, it really is a balance. But I think don't ever lose sight of that. Like, you're an artist, that comes first. But then just learn how to be smart and balance out that with the logistics of, all right, I gotta make some money doing something I don't want to do. That's fine. But never lose sight and think like your dream is ultimately the dream that's going to, even if you don't make money in the long run, you might, who knows, you might get hit by a bus in a week. Are you gonna spend your last 6 months of your life doing something you enjoyed or hating life?
Okay, that was deep. No, but
I'll quiet down now.
So now, I mean, honestly, for me, the takeaway there really is follow your passion. And since we're getting to talk about independent filmmaking in this YouTube age, the other neat thing we can bring up and we can talk about is Patreon. Because, I heard somebody likes Patreon out there. Nice.
I do.
Yeah. But so I'd love to hear what you guys think about how Patreon can funnel into what's going on here, because you can continue to grow as an artist. And had Patreon been as big and as cool as it is now when you started, would you have used it, and how would you have used it?
I'm gonna change your question a little bit.
Okay.
So the idea behind Patreon and Indiegogo and Kickstarter is that you find people that are interested in what you're interested in and say, give me some money and I'll make you something you're gonna enjoy, right? Like, that's basically what it comes down to. The trick is to make sure that, one, you're delivering and you're getting your stuff out there, but the other one is again, engaging. So, I'm working up on making a documentary about a blacksmith down in Tampa. So, to me, that's super interesting. I love the idea of forging things and these old school skills that seem to be going away. Now, I can go and I can find a local blacksmith club. I can find people that are doing it all the time. And I can say, hey, I'm gonna make a piece about this. I think you would be interested, let's talk. And I can say, here's my Kickstarter, here's my Patreon page. And the people, you're reaching your core audience before you have the end product, and it allows you to make something bigger and better for them. But again, it falls back to understanding that in this age, you can hunt down the niche that you want to deal with, and more often than not, someone will throw you $5, $10 to help you along your way because they're legitimately interested in what you're doing. So if way back when I went here, if I would have had that, I would have made even more projects, because you struggle as a student. You got to worry about rent and food and projects and schoolwork. And if someone would have thrown me an extra $100 so I could feed a crew and shoot a short film over a weekend because I'm making it about something they're interested in, I would have done so much more. And it takes a little bit of that stress away. But again, the key comes down to find the people that are going to be interested, talk to them, be personable, and then just start making stuff. I think that answered kind of your question. Did that do okay?
I'll accept it.
If I've learned anything from, it really is about people being involved, that actually care to do it. Because when I first tried to do, we shot a skate film in Barcelona, and it was the first time we ever added this Spanish skateboarder and I. We added at the end of it a little donate link. I want to keep doing these. We had no money. I mean, we're literally sleeping in train stations in Barcelona to pull it off. And we were dreaming of we had videos that were getting millions of views. And so we're if we add this, I mean, if only 1%, you think of it from that capacity, donate $1, then it's going to be a lot of money. But it never works like that. It'll be a fraction of people donate, but they'll donate much more than $1 because it's much more of an investment. It's not just that was cool. It's actually no, I care too. This is awesome. And the donate thing never really amounted to much other than a few people would donate a lot more than I would have ever expected. And so Patreon, I kind of avoided all those kind of things because I think I felt really more like self-conscious. Like I felt weird asking for people. But that was just my own self-consciousness as an artist. You know, it's like when you're going to school and you're going for whatever your craft is, the idea of like charging somebody $1,000 to like design them a logo, you're like, I can't do, like, that's too much money. But then you know, your bills come in, you're like, okay, I have to do something here. You got to get over that because it's just, that's all it is. You don't have the experience, or the confidence via experience yet. But so Patreon kept hitting me up and asking me to, you know, kind of get involved, and I didn't have to do much. And I did, and I found that it's much less about, you know, thousands of people kicking in $1, and all of a sudden I'd have like, it'd be very slow, but then like someone would kick in like $50 a month. I'm like, who is paying me $50 a month to create little stupid skateboard videos? And like I would talk with them, and you know, like the crowdsource stuff, you're supposed to do kickbacks, you know, send them T-shirts or whatever. They don't care about that really. Like, I mean, maybe it's different for product design or whatever, but as an artist, like, you know, I would feel like, oh, I'll put your name in there. Like, yeah, whatever. We just want to support you. We're just excited on your work, and we want to be part of it. It's a much more, it's the relationship thing. It's much more about someone will want to be part of something that you're interested in because they're interested in it.
For me, I wish I would have took the time when I was in school to learn more about the crowdfunding websites. I did have a weird experience where I was trying to get crowdfunding for one of my plays, and of course, I just put the information out there. It was like, okay, somebody will see it, but nobody saw it, so I didn't get any money. So of course, that was kind of like, what is this for? But then I kind of learned more later that you have to invite people to that link and get them to donate. So as you graduate from college and stuff, you get to a point where you're just tired of waiting. You know, I know with me, when I want to produce something, I'm going to figure out a way to produce it. And so I've found for me, just getting on the phone and talking to some of your associates that you may have met, try to find those doctors, lawyers, even NFL football players that I had an opportunity to know back in my Florida days. Those are the people that you need to kind of figure out how you can go at them. And don't just go at them for money, try to get to know them and what they're going through as well. I've also took it upon myself, instead of doing a crowdfunding and try to get people to donate, and then you may have to give some money for that or give them some kickbacks. I created a PayPal, my PayPal, where I basically send the link out when I'm asking for donations and all that good stuff. And you never know what can happen with that. You know, just you got to stay on top of those as well. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna share your experience. I haven't really had a very good experience with any of the crowdfunding, but my biggest experience or shocker was when I sat in front of an executive with a project that I had put on crowdfunding on Indiegogo, and he didn't fund it because it had been there, and it was a great project. It was a really, really great project. The project ended up going to legend several years after. But someone once told me, you know, you have to be very secretive of your work, and you have to protect it, and you have to almost be very jealous of it. So for me, and I know there is no real formula out there for any of this stuff, but for me specifically, I will not use the sites for my work because I just didn't have a good experience. I think that it depends on the project. You know, I've shot a lot of documentaries with a lot of social issues. I did 6. And I funded all of them through nonprofits and donations, but I did it privately. I never made it public. So that's kind of like the way it worked for me. But I've had a lot of friends that have funded a lot of stuff, and they've had an amazing experience. So I think it all depends on what kind of project you're talking about, and I think there's a road for every project, you know.
I actually think that's a great answer. And I actually love the fact that everybody up here has had different experiences with all of this. Because as members in our audience right now, you're sitting here and you're thinking about what's going to work best for me. How are these things going to work for my project, for me as an artist, for the people that I'm trying to connect to? And the real story here is just that. It's going to be different. Because no two artists ever make it the same way. They can't. By definition, you're an artist. You're a creator. To be an artist and creator means that you are creating your own path. One of the best joys that I've had being a department chair here is working with students and watching them develop and find that path. And one of the passions that I have is listening to people and hearing about how their path has been created this way. And and I apologize for kind of taking over for a second. You guys have really just, I don't know, you've sparked a bit of that passion in me for it. And I just want to say thank you, because that's awesome. And I really want you guys to get that takeaway from this. That those moments when you're at home and when you're like, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I should do this, I don't know if I'm good enough. I ask you, would you say the people up here they've made it, they've done stuff? I mean, I'm going to say yes. Did you hear any single one of them go, I was perfect and I was ready the minute I hit the ground running? Not a single one. And that's one of the biggest obstacles for artists in general, is being able to look at yourself and go, okay, this is going to work, and release it to the world. And kind of wrapping back into the concept of this being the YouTube age, it is an age of artistic democracy. And artistic democracy is going to allow you to create beautiful works for the people that find them beautiful. I love the comment that Brett made about how when he was working with Patreon, not everybody gave $1. But there were people that were so impassionate that they gave 50, and they didn't care about a t-shirt. I guarantee you there is someone out there that loves your artwork that much. There are billions of people on this planet. Somebody will love it that way. So my question, and kind of like my last question before we open up for questions, is going to be, you guys have talked about relationships, and I love that a couple of you guys have already started talking about some of these people you've connected with. How has your audience changed you? Because you've made connections with these people now, you've talked with them. That's been one of the big core things here. Everybody's said relationship, conversation. What is your conversation today versus when you started?
Okay, I guess I'll start. You mean like through the relationships that you've made being public? I have had a great experience with this. I think that, putting yourself out there when you have such a clear vision of what you want to do, when you have such a clear message, also when you speak to people, the people that will get back to you, first of all, the people within the industry that will reach out to you. I know my biggest surprise was Edward James Almost. He reached out to me, and I couldn't believe it. Till this day, I still shake. I had done I was shooting a short film in Miami. And it was a short film. I went through this very difficult time in my life. 2 years after I graduated from Full Sail, I had this film, and I signed a contract with the producer who basically was a fraud, and all this stuff happened. And so I found myself in a very difficult position for about 8 months. I literally had no work. I had no work of my own. I wasn't necessarily looking for somebody to pay me. I just didn't have a project that I was currently working on because my script was under legal, there was an investigation and all this stuff was going on with the lawsuit. And so I found myself in a situation where I was in New York and I was hungry and I was cold and I didn't know what to do. And somebody told me, go to Chicago. Just go to Chicago. You're a Latino. There's a lot of influential Latinos in Chicago. You need to go there and let people know what you're going to do. And so I am sitting at a Starbucks and I open up my laptop and I envision things. I always have to draw things in my mind as to where I'm going to go. And so I opened up my laptop and I wrote my trip to Chicago. And so some guy walks in literally and says to me, oh, you're going to Chicago? And I looked at him and inside I'm like, first of all, I have no money, but yeah, I'm going to Chicago. And he's like, oh, that's great, And so he says to me, I saw your homeless documentary 3 months ago, and so I recognized you, blah, 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 because I'm actually on the film. And I'm like, oh, great. So we start having this conversation. I gave him my card, and he left. And he says, and so about 5 minutes later, he's like, hey, so when are you going to Chicago? And I'm like, well, I'm thinking in a week or so. He's like, so have you prepared to go? And I'm like, no, I'm in the process of Within 20 minutes, I had tickets, everything. He was one of the commissioners for Chicago. Anyways, he brought me to Chicago, and he brought me into this panel to talk about independent filmmaking. And specifically, as a Latino in this country, how do you create content that's going to influence the community? And so I'm in a room kind of like this, and it's dark, and I'm talking, and I really, I'm like literally very near out of full cell, so a lot of times I didn't know what I was talking about. But Edward James Olmos was sitting in the crowd. And so he reached out to me through my social media, and at first I thought, there's no way. There's no way. But his message to me was, your message is so clear, you inspired me. Like and he was so open about telling me not to give up and telling me not to lose that spark and telling me to keep it real. And so my answer is, it's fantastic. I think when you put yourself out there and you do it with honesty and you tell people every time you meet them, this is what I want to do, and this is my dream, and this is my goal, and I'm doing it, people are interested. People want to know. And also, it goes as well for people who are just watching your stuff. I, get messages all the time from people from different countries, and they're like, "Oh, I just saw your interview on CNN or what have you, and I wanted to, I'm inspired. Like, I want to do this or that," and that's really awesome. Like, that's really, really great. So to me, or like when you go to a film festival and people watch the film, and I had I did a film about children with arthritis, and there was a guy that came up to me, and he was 48 years old, and he's like, "Oh, I was that little child. Like I was like that. That's what I felt." And I think that connection is what I make films for. Yeah.
Well, with me, it probably took me producing my fourth short film, where I really started to kind of realize where I wanted to go as a filmmaker. And I remember it being like my fourth film dealt with human trafficking, and how it was a big issue right here in our own backyard. And it was just like, wow, I told this story about it and tried my best to tell a great story. And from there, it was kind of like, I want to do more films like this. I want to do stuff that we all maybe struggle to talk about. So from organ donation, I did a film on, as well as bullying in the public school system. And so it's like, I started to realize that these are the type of films I wanted to tell. And just like he was saying, you have to give your all. Someone out there is going to see your passion. And I'm a storyteller, so I have a quick story. I'm going to try to tell it quickly. I met a gentleman when I was teaching. I was actually teaching drama for Orange County Public Schools. And we had this where basically professionals come in and talk to the students, the teach-ins, I think we call them. And this gentleman came in. They were wondering, because they knew I worked in the film. I was producing films and whatnot, if I had anybody. And I didn't have anybody. I was like, I don't know anybody right now. And so this gentleman, they ended up picking somebody for me. And I noticed he had the same name as one of my classmates from high school. But I didn't question it. But this guy had his own construction company, and he talked about this brilliant book about being a lawyer and all the struggles he went through because he made some wrong decisions, and how it caught back up to him. And I always say this, the good Lord work in mysterious ways. So I'm listening to this story, and my students are all involved, and he's promising them books of this book that he's showing us. And I'm like, shoot, I want a book too, And time went on, never did hear anything about him or the story again, and didn't question about it. It was in the back of my head. I kept moving forward with the route I was going. And so my mom ended up hitting me up one day. It's funny how your parents get involved. And she happens to be doing the hair of this gentleman's wife. You know what I'm saying? And they were just sitting there talking about their children and how they were the same age. My mom was like, wait a minute, your son went to school with my son. And we found out that this was one of my old high school classmates that we met in like 4th grade. And I ended up getting a book from the gentleman, and his goal was to possibly turn this book into a feature film, which I'm currently working on now. But before taking on that journey, I wanted to show him how I am as a producer, and so I wanted to see how he was as a producer as well. So I actually brought him on board. My last 2 short films that we produced. And this is how it goes to, you have to know how to pitch yourself. It's not easy. It's no secret formula. We all know that. But this gentleman, he gave $2,000 to one of my films, and then he gave about $500 to the other. And so it was just like, these are the type of people, you know, that just come. It's just amazing how you find yourself meeting these type of people that want to invest and believe in you. And so I'm excited to work on his book. And to get back to the actual question, it's like you notice that your audience do have a big effect on what type of projects you do produce. But you know, as an artist, you always got to stay true to yourself and never forget that. And I'm hoping I can stay true to my goal, which I want to tell films that change lives. So
I would say that the conversation from, you know, when I started at film school to where I am now has become more mature and succinct, and meaning that, you know, when you're in school, you're going to find this group of 10 people, and you guys are going to have all these grandiose plans, but you're not picking one and rolling with it. You're picking 50 and doing like 5 things on each. So now it's like, when I hear from someone through social media feedback, or I'm sitting down with a producer or a friend and we're talking, it's very much just streamlined. This is what we want to do. This is how we get there. Here are the steps we take. And I've gotten much more, much better at being able to arrange a conversation and a line of thinking in a way that it allows for a track to follow. So instead of being scattered over like 15 different things, I have one I'm focused on, and then I have these other ones that are just kind of stewing. And so it seems like, you know, you put a video on Facebook or on YouTube and you get some feedback and you're like, okay, so let me take that to this now, and I'll talk to them about how I can be better in the future. Or it's much more about embetterment at this point as opposed to these ideas, I guess would be how I would say the conversation has changed. It's just been much more about focusing and finding a steady stream of ways to improve and to have a conversation with the people that are watching your stuff to make it not only better for them, but to allow you to grow as an artist. Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, I think considering that most of my career and pre-career was built through YouTube and those kind of social media, I mean, even earlier social media kind of worlds, I think I've always been surrounded by the idea of my audience having very direct impact on me. But I think I've always been one of those people that I'm just going to make something anyways. Like if you want to, I was probably always self-conscious, and probably still am, about like pitching. So I never really, I probably never acquired the skills that I would need if I actually wanted to like produce some large budget thing, because I probably can't sit in front of people and be like, here's an idea. It's more of like, I don't want to tell anyone because I'm a little self-conscious. I know it'll work out. I know it'll be good, which is probably why I taught myself all the filmmaking qualities, editing. I've been doing everything myself, is because I never have to answer to anybody, which in all reality probably just comes from like a weird self-conscious aspect. But then, you know, via a YouTube situation, it becomes a validation. I don't know if I'm necessarily needing the validation because I do it for myself to some degree, but then I realize in those tougher moments that your audience is with you. And as weird and Wild West as the internet is, and they get really interesting, the comments, it's very empowering and very nice. On the note of, you know, this idea of these weird random stories that bring you to like your funding or whatever opportunities, I think if anything I can really stress is that if you, and you're going to struggle, I mean, it's just going to happen. I mean, it's good. It's a positive thing to go through in life. But if you're frustrated with yourself based off of like a track you've set for yourself, like, well, I did this and I did that and I'm supposed to, most stories you'll hear, like success stories, are always weird anecdotal moments. They're like, I bumped into a guy at a coffee shop. Like, it's just constant random funny stories. And so to let go of your own, I don't want to say responsibility, because it is about like learning how to take the opportunities and run with them efficiently, like knowing what to do in those moments. But like, don't be so hard on yourself in the idea of like, I went to school, I got my degree, I did this is the right thing to do. Yeah, but you have no idea that the weird moment is around the corner, and you're never going to know it. Right. Otherwise, it wouldn't be that funny of a story. Right. It's always these random coffee shop moments. So
there's something I want to share quickly, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but the feedback that you get sometimes may also not be positive, and you got to deal with that. So I released this trailer. MSNBC's released it through their website, And it was obviously a YouTube link, and I was so excited, and I couldn't believe that MSNBC had picked it up, and I did all this press about it. And I remember waking up that morning, and there's all these views, and then there's all these comments. And what had happened was, I'm Colombian, and so this film, this specific documentary I had done was in English. And all these Spanish people were so angry at me, were so upset that I would not choose my own country to tell this story. But when I encountered that very first, I'm gonna log into MSNBC and oh my gosh, I can type my name and Mom, come. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the hell? So that was a shock. But you know, you gotta be ready for that stuff.
Yeah.
You gotta be ready for people who may not like your stuff, but they're still watching it. You know, so
You never really are ready either. It just becomes like, just know the information that it's okay.
just don't check.
That's really all it
Just don't check. I don't
that's-
check anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Well, guys, there is a wealth of information up here, and the amount of passion from these people is amazing. I want to thank you guys for coming to the Independent Filmmaking in the YouTube Age panel discussion, and I want to open up to questions for you guys. So.
Did anybody raise their hand?
That was I'm just kind of like, I can almost see some hands. So guys with microphones, you're going to have to help me. I can almost see some of these people.
You can relax now.
Okay, we have one here.
I saw one here, and I saw that guy jump out of his chair. That was kind of cool.
He's got a nice backlight.
Thank you. But I had a question. I've been working on my own YouTube content for a number of years. What would you say as far as producing YouTube content is more important? A regular release schedule or quality of the content?
I can answer to that.
Please.
So it's basically two perspectives. One, every part of me wants to say quality is more important. Now, if we're actually talking strategy,
Right.
it's regular content. I had always done a video like every 6 months for a long time, and I'd get crazy amount of it was like I poured my heart into it, and I would get millions of views on these videos, but my subscriber rate was not the ratio was way off in comparison to other pieces. Last year, like the beginning of 2016, I started a weekly series, and I've doubled my subscribers in a year, where I spent like 9 years or so leading up to my initial number. So from a strategy standpoint, consistent content, regular content, but that's strictly strategy and building an audience, which is important and smart. But I think most of us can agree that it's impressive when somebody's got 1 million subscribers, but if all of their content is giant clickbait thumbnails and you're like, how quickly do you go I don't care?
Right.
So yeah, it's impressive and you have the audience, but I think isn't that kind of the whole story of most art in general, is that you're the bigger the audience, the more the resources, the more a lot of people slip off and just kind of focus on, that's the problem, focusing just on money and just on whatever. These are symbols of your art, but they're not your art. So it's, like I said, if your goal is building numbers, regular content, but don't be tricked into basically just ruining yourself as an artist just for the sake of these numbers, because they don't mean anything in the long run in the way your art does.
Hi, my name's Caitlin. My question's directed specifically at Brett. I had a similar experience to where I went from a stable editing job to kind of following my passions and coming here to school. So my question is, how do you maybe deal with some of the criticism that you might get from family and friends who don't really understand what you're doing? And did you ever have doubts in yourself that you were doing the right thing by quitting your job?
For sure. Yeah, I wish there was better advice as far as the family aspect, because that's just part of the struggle as an artist. I mean, I'm not sure, I'm not a parent myself, but I can't imagine the idea of your kid oh, I just spent how much money to go to a school that I want to exit into a situation. I mean, The reality is most of us are all exiting school, entering into an industry that kind of expects you to work for free or not, for a long period of time that you have to build yourself up. That's why these networking moments are so important. Your degree is good for you, but don't think that it's going to get you into anything. It is these relationships. So from a family perspective, it's hard to explain that and that following your passions and no, it makes sense I'm PAing for 6 months on a, whatever, but that's just part of the deal. I can't say there's much of a solution to the idea of you're going to doubt yourself. You're going to have these moments, but with anything, you got to have faith in yourself. I absolutely, quitting my job was scary. I was only 22 and I was supervising at a VFX house in Hollywood. It sounded, I grew up in Chicago and I lived in California and I work in Hollywood and there's mountains and stuff. It was cool to brag about that. I was working on, music videos for Beyonce and Kanye and J-Lo doing VFX. And it was an awesome thing to brag about. But that's kind of where it ended. And it became this isn't savvy to what I want to be doing. And I didn't know how important that was for you, your soul, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's just important part of you. So yeah, I the best way I could basically just say is you're going to run into that, of course, but just to have faith in yourself. And then you're going to still doubt yourself, but have the information. Just have it in the back of your head going, this is normal. I'm supposed to struggle. I'm supposed to run into these things. I talk a lot too, so go ahead.
That was a great answer.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Right here. Where are we going?
Live stream. Zachary Christmas from Digital Arts and Design would like to know how you go about getting funding for projects that take place outside of the country.
Yeah, we'll look at you.
We're going to look at you on that. You saw
Of course.
that. That was smooth.
So I guess I might be able to answer that. I just funded actually 2 projects, one in Colombia and one in Spain. Very different projects, entirely different projects. And so how did I fund it? Let's see. I'm going to share a secret that kind of worked with me. So I had this idea to make this film because Colombia currently has a problem with. We've had problems with narcos, right? We all know that. But in the late 80s, Colombia created a law that would extradite all these bad guys out of the country, right? Well, 20 years later or more, that same law is extraditing innocent people. And what happens is the United States has to keep up with its number of people that are being I'm trying to explain it. They need to keep up with the number of people who get extradited so that their funding doesn't go low. So if somebody from a government agency calls Colombia and says, how many narcos do you have? And they only have 5, the quota is 10. So they need to go out there and catch 5 guys and just make them a profile and make them look like narcos. I just couldn't believe that was real. I just couldn't believe it. So what I did was I created a proposal and I presented it to CNN and I said, listen, if I shoot this film, will you distribute it? And they said yes. And then I went to Colombia and I reached out to all of the agencies or people who I could have that would be interested in this project with that letter from CNN stating that it was just a letter of intent. Hey, if you make it, we'll look at it. And I funded the project entirely. That was a way to do it. And then I just funded a film in Spain, and literally I funded through film festivals. I went through several film festivals, made a lot of connections with people who just love film, who have a lot of money. And they just fell in love with the idea. So I think the networking, the just going around and finding the right people to really just, you can pitch a film to somebody who likes drama and maybe you have a comedy. That's not gonna work. You need to know who you're pitching. I've literally studied this idea of pitching stories because, as a filmmaker, I'm more of a director, even though I've produced all of my stuff. My heart really lies in directing. That's what I really love. That's what I live for. And so my idea of selling my story to someone with money was scary. And I just one day said to myself, I will not go through this anymore. I need to learn how to do this thing right. And I don't think I know how to do it right, but I think at least I'm not afraid, and I know that there is a technique, there is a way to present your work and yourself. And I think it's all about just having that very direct contact with this person. Because at the end of the day, you get there with the pitch that's what, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. I've seen 20, which is a mistake, by the way. But you know, you have a pitch. But if you're not there with your passion as a person, if there's no connection with that other human, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So we heard about this a little bit earlier, but how do you deal with the negative person, like the YouTube comments and all that? Like, we didn't hear from you two on that.
I mean, for me, it's a matter of paying just way more attention to the positive. And there's a lot of people on the internet that have nothing better to do than to try and start stuff and to slam people. And, you know, a lot of that comes from a place of they're not creating something, they're not doing something. And, you know, there's always going to be people that don't like your stuff. It's just going to happen. You know, people didn't like the Sistine Chapel when it was done, but we still look at it and it's great. And so it's just a matter of, you know, realizing that what you do is something more for you, and good feedback taken, negative feedback that is thrown at you with the purpose of being negative as opposed to being constructive, just let it go. You know, if someone's like, hey, you know, I really liked your thing, but everything was just out of focus, you know, okay, that's a constructive comment. I can put my stuff in better focus. If they're just like, I hate you, I hope you die, like, just let it go. You know what I mean? Like, it's very much a distinguish between creative.
Going through that right now.
Yeah. Distinguish very much between the negative for constructive purposes and negative for negative sake, and you'll do fine.
I know for me, probably haven't really had, well, one real situation that really was gonna, you know, tick me off. But I was producing, I want to say maybe it was my second film. And I had the wonderful opportunity to work with my parents, and so I casted them in the film as my parents, which was really cool for me as an actor as well. But I had a classmate, actually, from the film program when I was here, who criticized that. They thought that was like, Ron can't find real actors, he got to cast his parents. And I honestly was about to get on the phone and call this guy up, you know what I'm saying? Right. But it was another classmate, you know, who I was really close friends with. You know, he calmed me down about the situation, and he said exactly what Kyle was saying. They're not doing anything, so why are you wasting your time worried about what they think? I mean, and I think it's crazy with social media now, you know, which you can call it cyberbullying in a sense, but it's crazy that people take time or have time to criticize people in such a negative way. If you don't have anything positive to say, you shouldn't say anything at all. But that's just the world we live in, so you just gotta have thick skin and be able to deal with that.
Real quick, on the constructive side too, I think that's a big thing is like, yeah, differentiating between like real, actual conversation and something longevity. And that kind of goes back to your question. For the constructive side, it's a real good human trait to basically learn to not be defensive. And then putting yourself in an empathetic side to whoever's talking to you. So when your parents are talking to you, like, what are you doing? The best way to have the conversation is to put yourself in their shoes and then craft around it. Because, like, have faith in yourself, but understand the position people are coming from. And that goes for the criticism of your work in the same sense. Like, you know, they're right. I mean, they're scared about, you know, you having enough money or whatever, or they want your work to be better. There is a good intention there. And whether you take the advice or not is completely separate from the idea of the way you interact with these people is give them the benefit of the doubt. And then you ultimately, are much more open to good advice anyways. Yeah. But, you know, you don't, you know, put them as outcasts and brush them off in both your work and what you're deciding to do with life in general. So understand that most people are good people. I mean, realistically, most people have good intents with some bad habits, basically.
It's a good way to put it.
I'm Joseph. So I graduate in less than 3 months. And so my question is, as you know, Full Sail isn't cheap. And so when we leave, what really for you, when you know like that you failed like really, really badly, what kind of rekindles your passion to keep going when you're not really sure, especially for all of us that are just leaving Full Sail? And then my other question is, when it comes to YouTube, you know, before you put pen to paper, how do you find your demographic and kind of mold your script to that demographic? Like I know with Ron, you tell true stories, so how do you really find your demographic? And that was really to all of you, not just to Ron specifically.
I think with me, it was just getting compared to Mr. Tyler Perry too much. And so I wanted to be different coming from a theater background. You know, I give him his respect. But I wanted to, you know, I wanted to reach a broader audience starting off top. And I think my mom was the one who told me when I was getting ready to do my first play, she was like, you want to be able to talk to anybody. You don't want to just to be able to do films for African American. You want to be able to do films for everybody. And that's important. We all have the similar things that we go through in life. And you know what I'm saying? And I don't want to just talk to one demographic of people. I want to talk to everybody. And I think that's the difference with me and where I want to go. And I think I forgot what your first question was, but I had an answer for it. Yes, that's right. Yes, so with that question, it is hard. I'm gonna be honest. I'm still going through it. You know what I'm saying? I have a smile on my face because I'm blessed with some amazing people. I work with some amazing people here at Full Sail that always keep me positive and confident. But the crew that I work with, they're very positive. They're outgoing. You put yourself around people that are positive, then that's what you're going to get. Sometimes you're going to have nights when you just like, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? But we go back to those YouTube videos that when you first started out. Sometimes I have to do that. I'll have a day where I sit and I watch that very first production that I've done, and it's like, wow. I remember I didn't know crap back then, but look at me now. You know, I have all this work behind my belt, and I think that's what keeps me going. And of course, a lot of prayer. And so you just got to put yourself around positive people. Negative people, we don't have time for that in 2017.
Sure. Oh, I definitely agree with that. I think that I think in your career, you're going to find what I'd like to call defining moments. And you got to look at those moments in which you found the strength to continue. And those are the moments that are going to allow you to continue because they're going to trigger this memory. And, I have several of those moments. But for you guys, as you guys get out there and the struggle becomes real, just start working on your projects and give it all your passion and, to do whatever you need to do on the side. But look at it as part of your journey. The real project is what you're writing. It's what you're creating. It's where you're going and where you're headed. And how exciting that you get to write that story however you want to write it. There is nobody to tell you how to do it. You're on your own. So just write the best story you can and go for it without being afraid, with no regrets. We all make mistakes. I've made so many mistakes, believe me. But the mistakes are part of the growth, and sometimes the problems that we may encounter on that road may be like, why is this happening? Why me? Like, I'm a good person or whatever. But later on, years after, you're gonna realize exactly why that happened, and exactly why you met that person that was horrible, and exactly why that project didn't work. Many times going back to that project that I had to file a lawsuit for. That film was never made, ever. Like, I couldn't make it. And so many times in my career, I'm always thinking like, Jesus, like I wrote that, it took me a year, it was amazing. But now, as I'm moving along in my career, I realize that particular project made me stronger, made me more determined. It gave me the skills and the strength that I needed that otherwise I would have never experienced. So now I understand why. So always go back to those defining moments.
Yeah, it's basically having faith in that whatever's happening in that moment, it's good for the long run. I mean, you look back in your own life and these, your childhood, your high school, and you think about like how incredibly taxing certain things were. You break up with your first relationship, and then years later, now like it's almost silly to think about, but think of how real that was, and you pretty much have to. It's a good habit to basically figure out that, okay, this probably doesn't ever end. I'm always gonna, like, whatever crazy moment I'm going through right now in life, in enough time.
You'll have another.
Yeah, you're gonna have more and more, and the ones that you went through will seem so petty and so silly. And so it doesn't make it any easier necessarily, but it becomes a trust with yourself. Because, like, the first time you go to a funeral, like, all these things are incredibly tough. but they're good for you in a sense. Like they're character building situations, and so. You know, if you can get to that position to basically say like, God, this sucks, but okay, I got this. I've done this before.
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are out of time.
What?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I know I'm very
There's so much
sorry.
more to say.
It's okay.
I know.
So much more. I talk too much. I apologize.
But so, if William, if you want to go ahead
Yeah.
and wrap it up.
For William.
You know what I love about these guys? They clap before you even say thank you. Like, you don't even have to say, thank you, guys. These guys deserve an amazing round of applause again. I'm going to force you guys to do another one. Thanks, everybody on the opposite side of the screen. This was independent filmmaking in the YouTube age. Thanks, guys.
Nice. That was fun.
I wanted to know your answer too.
I will say for me the big thing, like I'd struggle with it. So for me it was about never stopping. It was about I had to go out once a day. And it was just